evening, everyone, and we're not quite sure what we're going to call this show entirely yet. Unless you've got a name, Dave.
Um, Not really.
We're,
It's
we're not exactly grumpy, so
no. This is more of a kind of informal improv game review.
alright, yeah, we'll do that. Yep, we'll come up with a name eventually, or we'll just fake it like we always do. Anyhow, Dave discussed his favoriteest game of games, Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest, and so we're gonna go step by step with it. Because yes, even I cannot, un, you know, underestimate the impact that the game has had in the RPG world. Because without it, there was
Yep.
no RPG world, actually. And in fact, I dare say it was the first JRPG in a sense, too, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
In a
it's
sense.
takes the entire franchise, like the Legend of Zelda, influence from Western, you know, um,
Cultures. And in
well,
fact, the
what's that? I'm
first
I'm trying to think of the time period. Not
Arthurian legend.
Renaissance, but what came before the High Age of the Knights.
Yeah. The Arthurian legends, to be precise.
Pretty much, yeah.
And because at its
Medieval. There
core,
we go. Fucking a. I knew the one
medieval
was there.
medieval and Arthurian legends around that time, people
Yep.
don't realize is that Dragon Quest at its core started as the Princess and Dragon tales.
Yeah.
Got a princess? Got a dragon?
You
Let's
got a
go save
game.
the world. Got a game? Let's go save the world.
Pretty much.
So, of course, Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior was developed by Chunsoft at first, which Chunsoft was a Japanese developer, which they specialized in visual kei novels and role-playing games.
Yep. And there is a lot about Quest and really not just the first one, but since that was part of the identity it established with this one, that does harken back to the early PC based visual novel games. For instance, you have the separate battle that is not animated and it's
Right.
got the text underneath. You'd get maybe like when you hit the opponent, you'd
Yeah.
get the little flash, but that would be
Which,
the only real animation effect to it.
which in
But again, you're
fact,
talking about something made in 86 for Japan, I believe.
yeah,
Yep,
started in 1986,
86
May
was when it was
27th. Yeah.
released in 84. You were lucky you got that much battle animation.
And the folks don't know is that we didn't get it until 3 years later.
The NES itself didn't come over until the Famicom had time to really take the Japanese video gaming world by storm because of the video game
Crash in
industry
19.
crash of the early 80s, causing retailers in America to basically feel that it had been a fad that had had its time and there was no point to carrying new video game systems.
Although Nintendo, to its credit, persisted. They were like, "Hey, we've got something a lot different."
Yeah,
They demoed it to every American
we we
retailer,
we promise this will not be ET.
and some of them, to his credit, Howard Lincoln was
Oh
brave
yes.
enough to invest in Nintendo and said, "Hey, let's start your product over in America and let's see what we can do."
Oh yeah. There have been multiple books written about how Nintendo of America got started and those early years.
And
I would it um and it is very interesting how basically the couple of the high executives in Japan, including the son-in-law of Nintendo of Japan's big guru, uh, were basically told to go to America, find some Americans to get our back because, hey, look, we know it's been a few decades since World War II, but we know Americans still really don't like us
right.
as a culture. We're still trying to fix that. So get some nice Americans we can put up front that believe in the company and the product. And
And
that's where
how?
you get people like Howard Lincoln and Peter.
Yeah. To their credit, they knew they had something big and went with it. Now, Dragon Warrior was released on the Famicom in 1986. It was
Yep.
released on the MSX system, which is famous for the Metal Gear games, so good computer system. It was
Oh
also
yeah.
released Japan only for the Super Famicom.
There was a remake.
Yeah, Game Boy Color. Um, Came out in '99 in Japan, 2000 in North America. Mobile
Yeah,
phones
the Game Boy Color was a bundle
remake.
with Dragon Warrior 2 and
Two.
was basically a straight up port of the Super Nintendo
Yep.
remake because it was also a 1 and 2 bundle since the games being early NES lifetime,
Right.
two of them did fit on a SNES cartridge.
Yeah. Mobile phones in 2004, Japan only. The Wii, Japan only in 2011, and on these Android phones in 2013 and 2 months ago in
Yep.
September.
The Wii was a 25th anniversary disc that was the same 1 and 2 bundle and the Super Nintendo slash Game Boy Color
Right.
um, port of Dragon Warrior 3,
Now, I would like to.
which were all linked story wise. They were, the three of them do compose one big narrative, so
Right.
that's why they were bundled together.
Right. The game in earnest, to give you a little background, was created by Yuji Horii, who took inspiration from the proto RPGs Wizardry and Ultima, which we'll get
Yep.
to Wizardry and Ultima. Don't worry, RPG fans. I I I have met Lord British Richard Garriott. He's a super nice guy
And Ultima did hang on for a long time,
and is
even
still
even
going.
yeah, it has it early on wormed its way into the MMO world, Ultima Online.
And as Dave mentioned, the creator of Dragon Ball, period, Akira
Yes.
Toriyama, did produce the game's artwork, and Koichi Sugiyama creates the music. So that's two big names in American
Oh, yeah.
and Japanese gaming and American and Japanese animation.
Because it should be noted that yes, Dragon Ball itself had barely begun at the time that Toriyama took this job. He had already done a previous long running manga by the name of Dr. Slump that had given him a major reputation. So even back in 86, signing him to do the art was a bit of a coup, as the art in Slump was one of the big things that helped people embrace him as a manga creator.
Now, before we just bore everyone with, just
Background,
complete complete background, let's get the
Stafford
games.
trivia.
Yeah, I'm gonna start up the game here in earnest. Just start playing it. Now there won't be much commentary on it because Dave and I want to show it for what it is, basically. And it's a simple title screen.
I will say, getting into the background story, and again, this was one of the things that intrigued me when I was reading the included documentation that we discussed before, is that the hero of the story, who is in canon unnamed because you give him the name you wish, was said to be the descendant of a previous hero of legend, or at least that was what he claimed when he came to this land, that he was the descendant of the great hero Edric.
Yep.
And that, spoilers here, was when you get to the very end of Dragon Quest III, you find out that this entire game was the big grand saving the world adventure Edric went on that made him a legend. So
Yep.
you play through 3 and realize, holy crap, I've been playing a prequel to 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's one of the early things to note, because that does factor into one of a couple of the quests in the game. Of 1 is helping prove to everybody that you are the descendant of the hero of legend.
All right, Dave. Take a look at everything, and
Yep.
all right, and let's get into the gameplay in earnest.
Now, I admit I cannot walk you through the game perfectly from scratch due to the fact that it's been a few years since I've played this, but your basics is you start off talking to the king, who's told you that, the Dragon Lord came, stole the Orb of
Princess.
Light,
And the
which is their
princess.
the local holy artifact,
Yeah.
and took his only child, his beloved daughter, for good measure.
Now,
Because again, Arthurian legend,
Princess and
medieval
Dragon.
stories.
Yes, Princess and Dragon.
Princesses get kidnapped and guarded by dragons.
Now, I wanna, when you saw on the screen as much gameplay as I did there,
Yeah.
you'll notice the name of the castle, Tantagel. Tantagel is from Arthurian legend. That was the name of one of Arthur's starting castles when he
Yep.
started on his quest for the Holy Grail. And on top of that, too, you have to also consider that this is going to be, from what you saw in the gameplay, it's in pseudo-Elizabethan English style dialogue.
Yes, it is. Some of the remakes downplayed that as we got into the 90s, and that became less of a thing. But again, it's part of the whole package. I'd also like to note, since we will not get this far into the game, that when you do fight the dragon to rescue the princess, that despite being a game made in Japan, and since at that time they weren't sure the NES was going to work in America, a Japanese audience, to fit the European medieval Arthurian theme of the game, the dragons are of the European style, not the Oriental style, which is not a major thing, but as I said, it's part of the fact that they did think through and put thought into making this feel like,
Right.
A potential, missing chapter in Le Morte d'Arthur.
And Dragon Warrior wasn't received as well because it did have some of the bad luck of being released at the same time. And a few months later you get Square's Final Fantasy. That did
at
knock
least
it
here
down.
in America.
Yeah, that did knock it down a few pegs. However, it is a critic's darling because they went back and they realized that, hey, this game is important.
Oh yeah, and a lot of it too was the fact that with every sequel they took chances in, the gameplay. You went from one playable character to three in Dragon Warrior 2. Dragon Warrior 3, you had 4 characters and you could pick their classes, so there was a lot more customization, which meant it was a lot looser story than you got in 1 and 2.
And in the first one, it was simplistic, it was Spartan. We're not going to lie to you there.
Because, again, it would have been programmed in like 84, 85.
Which...
this wasn't that far removed from Pitfall, folks.
No. And then, remember, on the gameplay that I just did previously, you also would have seen a menu that allows you to begin a new quest or continue a previous quest, change the speed of the messages.
Oh, yes.
That was... Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior set that for everyone.
Yeah,
before then you had the juxtaposition jumbled mess of Hydlide. Yeah. To not knock Hydlide entirely. It was good.
It's got a lot of interesting ideas.
It was good for the time, but it was a poor translation when FCI Pony Canyon brought it over, because it was originally for the Commodore 64, I believe. If I'm trying,
I'd have to go back and research, but I know it was on the Commodore 64. Whether
right.
that
it was originally computers.
Yes.
So that's what people should realize. It was for the home computers, and there's not going to be a lot of bells and whistles to it. And there was a lot of ideas that they should have translated better. However,
sorry, finish.
No, you're good. However, the difference is that you saw with Dragon Warrior Dragon Quest, whichever name you prefer, Japanese version frustrated the piss out of their players because it required
Eh,
the password system.
yes, they did change to the save battery.
You
Um,
did have to go all the way back to Tantagel to the Imperial Scrolls of Honor, but to
you know, or,
Enix's credit, they realized that the Imperial Scrolls of Honor was a pretty good idea that they should keep up with. They just
yeah.
improved it.
And to be fair, the game relatively early on does introduce you to an item that warps you back to the castle. So as you get farther away from your home base, it does compensate to help you get back there without having to waste another hour, which was especially good when I'm kind of low on health anyway.
Let's
Later
just fly
games,
back.
later games when you could save in pretty much any given town, you'd use the item and it would give you the option of where to go. Also, one of the other, and this was persistent in the localizations, is that as is in their culture, it's not as big a no, can't have children exposed to thing because they don't descend from Puritan styles. There's a lot more swearing and sexual innuendo in the Japanese version,
There
as
is.
well as in now this mostly factored into the later games where you have multiple characters and set aside churches and for your resurrections and your savings. But the Japanese versions would use a lot of the Christian crosses to denote the holy
Churches and the holy
when you're
grounds.
on holy ground, and your character, if you had one character in your party die, they would be put inside a coffin with a cross on the top of it, which was the style back in those days because you wanted to make sure the corpse was sanctified and safe from dark magic. But that was downplayed in the American versions because Christianity is actually a thing over here, where in Japan it's,
Kind of a
oh,
thing.
something some people do.
Right. And
Um,
yeah, and you also have to think too. The system is, you know, one against one against two, one against however many. And of course, take damage, you lose HP. HP's low. You don't immediately die. You just get taken back to the king to get resurrected, and you lose half your gold.
yes, that was the big one of the ideas that they generally kept through at least the first few sequels was the free resurrections when your entire party is wiped out was not free. You lost half your gold, which goes back to what I said in the other video of how much gold in level grinding there is in Dragon Warrior. Because if you do not keep a close eye on your health, you will end up losing half your gold a lot of times. And when you are building up to the really expensive end game armor and weaponry, that is a bitch. Because it's like, oh, now I got 25 fights I've got to repeat just to get back to where I was right before I died, let alone to my goal I was trying to get to.
But
The game did not want you to think dying was acceptable.
it's not.
No.
Now, the two basics, as it's as basic as it gets. The hero, the Dragon Lord. The supporting characters were King Lorik and
Which,
Princess
again, the
Gwendolyn.
names vary depending on which remake you're playing
Right, which is
and
Lars in
which
the
region.
GBC.
Yeah.
Of course, Alefgard, which is
The name of the world, essentially.
a land beyond Alefgard, basically, which Alefgard is pretty much the game's version of England.
Yeah, the first game, pretty much everywhere you go to is considered Isle of Guard. Um, the second game, which has a expanded world, start off in Alefgard, but go to other kingdoms.
Right.
So,
But yeah, just think about this game in context with the gameplay points that we put in. It's like we say, it's a cut and dry game. It's Spartan. You're gonna have to get used to grinding.
one of the just want to point out real quick. You may have noticed it in the game footage that as soon as you exit the main castle that you start off in, Tentacle Castle, you see a little, looks like a river, but if you look at the whole map, you're looking at an island across a respectable sized body of water, and another castle. That is your end game castle. This is one of the amusing things the developers did is and you find this out after your first couple towns, that you saw your final goal from the get-go. It was just a matter of exploring the world, trying to figure out how to get there, because something they also mentioned is that the Dragon Lord destroyed the only bridge to his island.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of your other quests in the game, was to
rebuild the bridge
via magic, because, again, Arthurian. When in doubt, have magic do something for you that would take months of humans. Plus, I don't think he was just going to stand there and let humans build a bridge he intentionally destroyed.
No. Now,
would have pissed off the Union, though.
It probably would have. Now, just remember, in context, you're here in Tentacle. Charnock is right here.
Charnock's to the south.
To the south? Yeah. It is to the south. Yeah,
yeah.
You're right. Charnock's to the south.
Tantagle's up here. Charnock's down here. Everything in between is water that you cannot cross, for you have no boat, no raft.
And the
no
water's probably poisonous.
Tied together with vine.
And the water's probably poisonous. Oh, we forgot to add that part.
That water is not, but you're right that the castle itself is surrounded by a poisonous swamp.
Swamps, yeah.
Luckily, by the time you're strong enough to actually get to the island without getting killed by the random monster encounters, a quick step or two in swamps not going to be a major detriment to your health. You've built up enough HP.
But yes, that was that was Horty's way of saying, "Hey, here's your end game."
Yeah.
Just don't think you're going to get there quite so easily.
It made sense in a game like this that was very experimental, because it did help motivate the players. Every time they went home, essentially, to save or to talk to the king, get some updated and quest information, you saw that end goal. You saw the evil castle surrounded by the poisonous swamp. To remobilize your motivation and go, it's going to be so cool when I get to go there. I get to see what the inside of that place looks like. You had the visual reminder there.
And
which was it's important to motivate,
folks. And you know what? That's what made it worth it. Now, let's...
You look at games like Mario, where you had the Bowser Castle every couple levels.
Yeah.
And you got reminded, okay, we appreciate you rescuing me, but you're not quite to the princess yet. Same idea. Keep people motivated. Remind them that they are making progress.
And just so everyone knows, Dragon Warrior was not gangbusters. In fact, Horty did have to publish a few articles with Shonen Jump. It did help the sales substantially, because they were like, wait, this guy's with Shonen Jump. So they bought the game in Japan.
Oh, yes. Shonen Jump was already well established by this point in the 80s over there, as one of the premier shonen genre manga magazines. And in fact, as I said, Dragon Ball, and before it, Dr. Slump had appeared in there.
Right.
So Toriyama was associated there, which helped again the articles. Hey, that guy, you love the art in that manga. Well, he did the art in ours too. Here's a little sample of it. But yeah, the game, you leave the castle. There's a village right next to the castle, where you can buy your first set of equipment and see some equipment that, as you're grinding to get your levels up anyway, you can save up your gold for.
And
Which is good because, again, when you're level 1, you're not going to survive more than 2 or 3 steps anyway. Later games, the castles would be built inside a village itself instead of having the castle and then the village next to it. But again, they also had a lot more. They also had more castles, so it made sense.
And I would like to tell people too. This is a quote from GameSpy when they were talking in retrospect about Dragon Warrior. And they said this quote, "It opened my eyes to a fun new type of gameplay. Sudden strategy, or at least pressing the damn A button, was more important than reflex, and the story was just slightly more complex than Rescue the Princess stuff."
Oh, yeah.
Up until then, it was Rescue the Princess, game over. But in Dragon Warrior, it's only about halfway over. Rescue the princess, you get her out of the castle, but you're not done yet.
Yeah, the princess was left in a cave guarded by the dragon. Because, of course, dragon in a cave. Yes, these are tropes, but be fair, this was one of the games that helped establish them as tropes. Yeah.
Set taken from Gygax and Gariot and all of the creators of Wizardry.
Yep.
The proto-RPGs that became the modern JRPG and the regular RPGs.
But yes, that is about halfway through the game that you rescue the princess, which, upon returning her to the castle, and that is amusing to see, you rescue her and your character sprite is carrying the princess until you get back to the castle.
Yep.
It is encouraging you to take her home ASAP. This, of course, leads to one of the more infamous among retro gamer
realizations.
Conversation swerves because you talk to the princess, and as is typical in fairy tales, she's so grateful to you that she's in love with you now. And she asks you if you love her back, and you have a choice of yes and no, but you don't have a choice. If you click no, she says, "But thou must."
Yep.
And asks you again, and you will loop into eternity. Keep saying no, but thou must, but thou must, but thou must.
Yep.
Thankfully, these kind of things were removed in sequels.
But let's
even back then they were mocked.
They were. But there it is, and it's nuts and bolts. That's Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior.
Yep.
It started the tropes. It's definitely got some pratfalls.
Yep, you fight a variety of enemies. You have the slimes, of which I showed off the basic version of via plushie last night, or whenever you watched the video. You could be marathoning this, so that would be about an hour ago. You had wyverns, aka little baby pseudo dragons.
They're mean.
Yes, they shoot fireballs, and the first time you encounter them, you do not have armor sufficient enough to shrug off a fireball.
Run like hell.
You have magicians who cast the only offensive spell in the game, appropriately named Hurt.
By the way,
excuse me, there is an evolved form, Hurt More.
Would everyone like to? We'll spoil it for you. Would you like to know how to stop that from happening? Learn, stop, spell.
Stop spell.
Learn, stop, spell quickly.
And of course, there's also sleep,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Stops.
very effective later in the game when you get to as you're trying to get to the village of Remolder, which is the only place to buy keys so you can access the various locked areas.
Yep.
Some of which hide treasure chests, some of which hide important quest items, such as the aforementioned Orb of Light and the ingredients you need to make the item that spawns your magic bridge that we mentioned you would need to get to Sharnot Castle earlier.
So,
but sleep is effective getting there because sleep has a very high accuracy rate against werewolves.
Yes.
That's right, folks. You do not just get dragons. You do not just get evil magicians. You also get werewolves. But let's face it, that's because it's a Phagmo.
And you don't need vampires when you've got the fucking Drakkies, pretty much.
Yes, the Drakkies. Picture a fat little bird, as in round, with teeny little wings and little clawed feet and little fangs, who want to fight you.
Every time.
One of the early villains. They are one of the early random monster encounters. They have some upgraded cousins, like the slime has the red slime and the metal slime.
We got the Drakki Mage.
Yes, the Drakki Mage. But you fight big, ugly slugs, which appropriately enough only live in the caves you have to explore.
Sandworms.
You do fight a few sandworms. You fight
in the deserts.
You fight, while you do not have vampires, you do have no flesh left pseudo-zombies.
Yep.
The skeleton and its couple variants, including the very nasty fucker, one of the few enemy characters in the game that actually brandishes a sword, the Wraith Knight.
So.
Yes, as in the undead, pissed off corpse
of a former knight. Of a former knight.
Yeah, that's not going to make you happy the first time.
Or the second time.
He's also one of the first enemy monsters that shows that, hey, we can get critical hits too.
Folks, that's Dragon Quest from Dragon Warrior from Enix.
Yes. A large variety of monsters that all look beautiful in their own kooky way, thanks to Akira Toriyama's designs.
Pick up, and yes, the aforementioned game that's going to be shown during this show, and that's going to be showing in the outro. That is on emulator. For all you emulators snobs,
it's like this. Getting cartridges of the game in this day and age is expensive. As I said, I myself had my collection sold off. Oh, for collectors, fanboy value, yes, I would love to have original cartridges of all the old NES American releases 1 through 4.
Which I do have. I still have my original release.
Yeah.
I really do, but it's getting a capture card that's going to work worth a shit.
Yeah, even if you have the equipment, capture cards of the quality that your favorite YouTube video gaming long play channels use is expensive. And
even then, those that can use the capture cards...
And they're a bitch to hook up.
Yeah. The only ones we know that do it right, our buddy DKS3A. Crazy Gamer. And
World of Long good.
Yeah.
They get good footage.
But they do emulate too, folks, so
well, that's true. Some of their stuff is emulated.
Yeah. Yeah, the stuff that it's possible not to emulate, but they can get on machines.
Yeah.
Kiriv and Mihail Best, they have a hell of a time. They'll admit it.
Hey, James Rolfe has admitted at times there's a reason even at my peak, I only did these videos like once once, maybe twice a month if I was making good progress, because getting footage of those things was god awful. He actually did a behind the scenes where he mentioned, was like, yeah, 15 minutes of gameplay footage, that's about 4 or 5 hours of trying to record.
Exactly. Well,
not even counting my parts, just game footage recording.
All right, everyone, like we said, we're going to outro you with some footage from the game. Enjoy it. If you like it, find your reputable ROM site. Just play it.
Hell, contact me if you ask me nice and promise not to try to steal my personal information or virus down my computer. I might help you find some hookup.
Right.
I do admit I do have a couple ROMs on my computer.
Right, I do too. So, folks, that's Dragon Warrior Dragon's Quest. So,
yes, it's simplistic. Yes, it's kind of annoying, but remember, if you do play it with that open mind of, this is one of the prototype pioneers of the genre, it had to be annoying at times, because that's how we learned what did and didn't work for console RPGs.
Right. Dave,
and the payoff's worth it, because when you kill that green dragon guard and the princess, all that work you did for grinding, all that work you did making your way down to that hidden cave,
and you make the Dragon Lord your bitch.
So good.
And then you make the Dragon Lord your bitch.
As long as you answer his question correctly.
Exactly.
Sneaky bastard.
Yep, let's just hum the theme.
It pretty much loops from there.
Yeah, let's go. All right, folks. Yep, it loops a lot.